سه دو یک سلام دوستان من امو پال هستم و موضوع ویدیویی امروز Game of Thrones است. Okay, so the remainder will be in English. You're welcome for those who don't speak Farsi. Believe it or not, I did not watch Game of Thrones. Weirdly enough, you would think, Paul, you played all these different like fantasy games, Dungeons and Dragons over the years, and you never actually watched Game of Thrones. No, I didn't. I think again it was the hype. You know, when you're watching things, other things are going on, people are saying, "Oh, this is an amazing thing." I had decided I was going to look at the book first, and then I fainted at the size of the book. And I whipped through and looked at all the cast of characters that were there, and I got to thinking, this is why I never read The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. So, if you can imagine, I just ignored all of this. I understood that there were some major characters in, there's this hot chick who talks to dragons, there's a really tough guy, then there's this magical guy named Jon Snow. This is all I heard. And I heard something about winter is coming. No, that was not exactly at the top of my list of things to look at or watch. And eventually, I had heard that the final season was an absolute abysmal disaster. So I didn't figure I wanted to invest all that time and then watch something that was going to wind up as being horrible. This brings us to last night. I sat down and I watched the pilot to Game of Thrones. Like usual, same kind of deal with all the other videos. I sat down, I watched it, I didn't collect any notes. These are my first impressions. There won't be really any spoilers because it's the pilot episode, and I think everybody is going to understand that I can't divulge everything. But at the same time, I have to give away little bits of my impressions of Game of Thrones. So my first impression was there's something scary in the woods, and it's all behind this giant ice wall. And the people living up in the north, there's a lord, and he has his family, and they're running things. And then there's a king somewhere, and he's got this other family set up, which is natural. And then there's, I think, a couple of other kingdoms. There seems to be one that's a whole bunch of barbarians, or barbarian type. And from what I can gather, there's a wedding that's being arranged between the hot chick, I put that in quotes, and this really tough dude. And they, like, the tough dudes, I think they're called the Dothraki. They are really, really nasty. They're brutal. They're evolutionary powerhouses. I have no doubt that 100 generations of Dothraki living their civilization will only produce really, really strong, powerful warriors. Not unlike, Sparta? And anyway, so moving forward, there's all sorts of political machinations, people wanting to get in charge of the whole kingdom. I still haven't figured out exactly. There's lords, but from what I know, there's a king, a single king, a guy that sits on the throne. I would assume that's what the Game of Thrones is all about. It's all about the intrigue. But at the same time, there's some threat that's coming from the north, from the darkness, the cold that's moving forward. And all I recall is blue glowing eyes of the villains. And they seem to move very fast, and they're very strong. Oh dear. Now, the people in the northern land seem to only refer to these creatures, White Walkers, I think. They, not to be confused with White Walking Dead creatures. They seem to be under the impression that nobody's seen them for 1,000 years. Now, call me crazy, but if your civilization has stagnated to the point where you haven't grown over 1,000 years, you've developed this wall, but you're just sort of maintaining a status quo, your civilization is really going to be prone to failing fast from almost anybody. I guess that's what sets up everything else in the rest of the television series. I think there's 8 seasons. I didn't do any research. You know me. It's just television. Well, so the next thing we're starting to look at is the dynamics of different people in the household, and people who are related to each other. There seem to be a lot of interesting banging going on. Kudos out to, what is it, Peter Dinklage, his character Tyrion. Oh my goodness, he plays a fantastic character. He's an absolute horrible human being, but at the same time, he's probably the smartest of the entire group. He really should be king, in my opinion, because I think the smart people should be kings. And I think that under Smart King, they might be able to break this 1,000 years of stagnation. In any event, he's involved. He really likes his whorehouses. Yeah, you know, such is the time, such is his rank and power. The family that he belongs to, they seem to be really into each other. I'm not even going to spoil that, but let's just say I'm getting some really strong Alabama vibes off of them. I like, was it Lord Stark? He seems to be pretty cool, and his family is interesting. And of course, there's also this Jon Snow guy that I mentioned before. That I know everybody in the books or something like that, people have referred to him and think he's this really awesome dude. I just don't want to be disappointed if I watch more shows and find out he's really not that awesome. There's a child, Brandon, of Mr. Stark, Lord Stark, and Brandon likes to climb. Brandon doesn't really listen to his parents, and I guess at the end of the first episode, something happens to Brandon. I guess that's going to be the cliffhanger to lure us in to watch the second episode. I saw a lot more of Emilia Clarke than I ever imagined. I had been warned of this fact. She's a lovely actress. She's gone through a lot of medical issues. You can search for it online. I think she's doing a fantastic job. But wow, that was a lot more of her than I expected to see. The next bit of stuff that I want to comment on is, of course, her brother, and I think their political advisor. So her brother looks like he's a super political, boffin who wants to go and try to reclaim the throne. So again, it's going to be challenges. There's going to be wars. There's going to be battles. I expect there's going to be assassinations. I expect there's going to be people that you love that are going to die. And then there's going to be new characters that show up throughout the entire series as they start getting reintroduced and grow as characters. Again, I haven't watched the series. I still just know that there's this tough barbarian dude. There's this dude named Jon Snow. There's some sort of like ice zombies in the north. And the hot blonde chick. And of course Tyrion. He just seems to be, I would hang out with him. I like how he responds to everybody. He's a bit of a smart ass. If you really think of it, if we're going to do like a Friends analogy, I consider him to be sort of the Chandler Bing of the group. And I haven't figured out the rest of the characters. I guess the daughter who just turned 13 of Lord Stark. I guess she's more like anyway, doesn't matter. I was just going with this stupid analogy because I know my friend really likes Friends. And trying to compare. Maybe I'll come up with a list later to compare all the characters. And that seems to be about it. All right. Would I have watched it? If I went back in time, would I have watched it? If I went back in time, if I could steal this video and present it to my 12 and 13-year-old self who was playing Dungeons and Dragons, I would say, yeah, absolutely. Holy cow. We've got swords. We've got like dire wolves. We've got talks of like these ancient dragon eggs. And you talk about these like frozen zombie warriors or whatever in the north. And obviously this is going to be huge battles and everything, I'd be like so into it. Of course, I'd be also interested in the naked blonde lady, Daenerys. That's it. I think her name's Daenerys. Good. So, of course, that would have just blown my mind too. I mean, semi soft porn and Dungeons and Dragons together. Yeah, my adolescent brain is exploding right now. Now, going forward, if I was gonna watch it going forward, would I spend the time watching it? I don't know. I don't know if I'm really into it. I have a lot of things on the go, and I have a lot of other stuff to be able to watch to keep up with the universe. So I'm not sure if I'd actually go with Game of Thrones. I think it was good to sort of expose myself a little bit, but again, I'm not really into the fantasy scene. I think honestly, I'm gonna probably try the first episode of The Expanse, but I'm gonna take a pass on Game of Thrones for now, unless I'm shut in for a couple of years again. Then maybe I'll take it up. But it really didn't do much for me, and I know a lot of people loved it, and that's great, and I wish them all the best. So I think I'm going to do The Expanse next week, the first episode of The Expanse. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I am a sci-fi buff, and I would love to take it on. In any event, this is the episode. This is episode 7, I believe. And I'm going to close this off and wish everybody a good time, a good day. Velan va be omide didar. All right. Kidoki. Adios.